G'day and welcome to the Onchain podcast. Don here with you. Our guest today is Gabriele Giancola, CEO of Qiibee, the pioneer of loyalty on blockchain. Qiibee offers world-class brands and rewards right in their marketplace. Powers Miles and More, Lufthansa's pioneer Onchain customer loyalty program. And if you've ever wondered how frequent flyer miles work or points work or loyalty programs generally work, if it's a bit of a black box for you, then this is going to be a very, very eye-opening program. We're excited to chat with Gabriele about the challenges of building Onchain, how they're revolutionizing customer loyalty and onboarding customers into the world of Web3. Let's dive in. Tell us then, what is your origin story? How did you get started in Web3, startups, tech in general? Where'd you come from?
So in Web3, basically, I got into through Bitcoin itself, hearing in 2016 the first time about it, and then starting to understanding a bit through reading the white paper, what it is all about, and then really understanding blockchain. My brother and I were already in loyalty before, so we understood already the in and out of the loyalty space itself. It was always our vision to connect the whole market. We never understood why are there so many loyalty currencies, why are there so many loyalty programs that at the end of the day people are registered in but they don't really use. Growing up in the space, we then actually understood why there are so many loyalty programs and so many loyalty currencies, because businesses just have a huge amount of benefit out of having their own currency, their own program, or they have their own data access and let's say a direct relationship to these customers. That's why there is not, let's say, the one loyalty program for all these brands, but everyone has, or most of them have their own. But through blockchain, we actually started understanding how we can connect the loyalty market without, let's say, taking away the benefits from these brands and actually adding value to the whole market for brands and for users. So it really started with Bitcoin. That was the first attraction point, then understanding the tech, and then seeing actually, let's say, the intersection of loyalty and blockchain, how it actually fits together. And today, I have to say, like, for me, blockchain was not born for loyalty, but it's literally the perfect match with loyalty.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very keen to drill down into Bitcoin, Web3, and loyalty specifically. Just to rewind into your story a little bit, you grew up in an entrepreneurial family, still went to university though. What was the draw to uni for you?
My mom. To us, she was like, you have to go to university. That is important. Honestly, I think it was kind of a standard process to go through. So that was always in our mind. It's fun because when I did the bachelor's, it was literally just kind of school. Like, you learn because you have your exams and you were understanding the stuff and so on, but it wasn't really, you didn't learn by doing. So it was literally, you read the book and you do the exam, right?
Sure, yeah.
When I did my master's, I was already working. So that was a completely different experience because I was actually able to apply what I was learning to business. So it was a completely different experience. And I have to say today, it's actually difficult because maybe you use still 5 to 10% of what you learned actually at uni. And also the world is just evolving so fast that most of the times what you've learned is already old, or let's say a big part of it. But there are still a few, I would say what was the most important part, honestly, it was to learn how to learn, basically. And having a very structured approach and being able to, let's say, learning faster all kinds of topics. So I wouldn't say that one specific topic stick to my mind, but actually more the process on how to learn. That was, I think, the most important value add from uni.
Right. Well, so you said you were already in the loyalty space with your brother before coming into Web3. What did that look like?
So we built our own loyalty program here in Switzerland, where we actually built a loyalty program for SMBs, small and medium enterprises. And it was also based not only on the purchase of let's say, goods and services, and then you get your points, but actually was kind of an early farming platform. Today, what you hear in the space, so farming, because we just thought it just makes sense. Like, you had Instagram coming up, all these user-generated content topics coming up. And so we said, you know what, why not adding that aspect to the platform? So you buy something, you actually make a picture out of it, you post it, and then you get points for it. So that was really the start. We learned a huge amount there, again, from a brand perspective, from a user perspective. But we really learned the issue of the market even more, because as soon as we talked to larger brands, they told us, hey, I want to have my own platform. Can you white label me your platform? And we're like, okay, but that doesn't play in the idea that we actually have in mind, because we want to create one big loyalty program. And that's really how we understood better and better the whole space. Again, what the user wants, what brands want. And when we started understanding blockchain and the whole Web3 space, and I have to say more the blockchain side, because we really believe that is actually the main value add to the whole world, to be fully honest. I mean, there are a few cryptos like Bitcoin, which make a lot of sense because they have a very clear use case. But otherwise, the tech itself is incredibly valuable. Everywhere where we have different stakeholders that need to share the same amount or the same information, blockchain just makes a huge amount of sense, and you don't have to, let's say, worry about a central party that actually controls that data, can change that data, can be hacked, and so on. So if you think about then loyalty and the loyalty space itself, because most people have the thought about loyalty that, okay, you have a brand, gives out points, you spend those points at that brand. But if you look at the largest loyalty programs in this world, they actually make a huge amount of money for their groups. So if you look at the airlines as an example, the most valuable asset is the loyalty program, is the frequent flyer program, because that's actually the part that generates the most amount of cash flow for the whole airline. Like the airlines themselves don't really generate a huge amount of profit. But the frequent flyer programs, by selling their miles, for example, to credit card providers, to hotels, to other partners, they actually make a lot of cash through that.
So it's more than just locking customers into an ecosystem. That it's more about
100%.
B2B or other kinds of partners that you're incentivizing to partner with you in a way that incentivizes your customers. Is that what I'm hearing?
Correct. Yeah, 100%.
Right.
I mean, best example is American Express and Delta Airlines. I think American Express buys around $3-4 billion a year miles from Delta just to incentivize their customers to exchange membership reward points into miles. And it makes sense, because the reason why most loyalty programs fail is because they don't give enough options to spend their points to the customers. So what is the best way to do it? It's actually to partner up with other brands, where you give the possibility to exchange your points into miles or your points into other points. And through that, you actually increase the liquidity of your own loyalty currency. And that's really, that's also where we are focused on, really that intersection of partnerships between different loyalty programs, and actually making those transactions between one point to the other much more efficient through on-chain transactions.
Yeah. All right. So I do want to get to the on-chain transactions, but just to kind of, again, understand more the loyalty ecosystem itself. So a third party like American Express, like I say, they're buying the loyalty of Delta Airlines customers' loyalty.
Basically, they buy the loyalty currency, correct. So American Express enables their customers, their credit card customers, to exchange membership reward points to Delta Skyline miles, and a lot of other airlines. So that's just one example. And basically, Delta Airlines sells those miles to American Express, and through that, Delta makes additional revenue and profit for the whole group. And on the other side, American Express can actually enable their customers to have more liquidity out of their points, which makes sense, because if you think about a credit card, first of all, it's kind of a commodity, a credit card. So it's like differentiating yourself as a credit card provider is very difficult today, just by the use of the credit card. So most customers decide which credit card to use based on the loyalty program that the credit card has. And let's say the amount of value that I actually have by using that specific loyalty program of a credit card, because I have more options where to spend my points. If the only use of the credit card would be earn some points and pay your credit card fee with that, it wouldn't be super entertaining.
Sure. Yeah, okay. So the airline in this example is incentivized because they want to sell their miles. The credit card company is incentivized because they can use that for marketing and for customer retention and acquisition. The clients are incentivized because by spending points on their credit card, they can accrue the miles in the for Delta Airlines, for example. And then what about the loyalty provider? What's the incentivization there? How does that operate?
So that's basically where we fit in. So right now, those transactions are done between the different parties. So between American Express and Delta, as an example, right? And there actually the issue starts because you have the so-called points bank, where it's basically a database with all the points transactions. So every time a customer earns points, spends points, exchanges points, they go in these points banks. And the thing is that you have a classic centralized database for Amex, and you have a centralized database for Delta, right? And these databases need to communicate with each other. So main issue starts really with the reconciliations, because Delta basically sends an invoice to Amex that says, hey, your customers spent this month, for example, this many miles, or they used so many miles. And American Express, of course, wants to, if we're talking about billions of dollars, they want to check that actually that invoice is correct, and that they're actually paying the right amount of money. Now, since American Express has their own data base, there's always a difference. And also, if it's small, like if you think about $3 billion, have a percentage is $15 million of difference. So there's quite a bit of money that can actually be lost, and that is lost right now between those transactions, because these reconciliations don't work perfectly. And if you put everything on chain, you actually don't have that issue, because you have both loyalty currencies on the same chain. So both, let's say, accounting departments have the same data points, right? And let's say the data information. So there is no reconciliation issue. And you completely eliminate those costs. And that's actually what we focus on, is really giving the technology to these companies to actually eliminate reconciliation costs. And if you want to go further, you can actually also do direct settlements between those brands. It will come more and more with stable coins being accepted also by these larger brands. But in theory, you don't even have to have a payment team that then pays that invoice. But since everything is on chain, since both agree on the terms and conditions, you can automatically transfer the USDT as an example, and even settle those transactions automatically. So you have instant reconciliation for these companies. You have instant settlements. So you save a huge amount of money. You eliminate those transaction costs in the form of mistakes, and the user actually has an instant exchange. So you don't have that issue as a user of, I transfer my points today, and in 3 days they actually come on the miles account, because that just ruins the user journey and the customer journey. If I want to book a flight, I'm booking it now. So I'm looking right now for the source of funds. And if I see that I have actually points that I can exchange in miles, I want to use them now. I won't think 3 days before to actually make that exchange so that I can book my flight. And most of the times, if I book it 3 days later, it will be a higher price. It actually happened a few times to me, where the price then was higher. So the exchange of points into miles didn't actually have a big impact.
Yeah, right. Okay, so you're working with your brother in loyalty. 2016 comes around and you're exposed to Bitcoin and blockchain technology. You start to see the kinds of, maybe the solution as you've just kind of laid it out there. How did you then go from what you were working on to what you're now working on?
Learning by doing. And trying out a lot of different things, in the sense that it was really, at the beginning, we were basically selling blockchain itself to these companies. We're saying, hey, look what an amazing technology. You can do so many different use cases, until we learned that these brands, they like the idea of, let's say their innovation teams like the idea of exploring new technologies, right? But if you talk with the person that actually is responsible to generate more income through these miles sold, or the other person that actually is involved in removing all those reconciliation costs. They just care about the solution. They don't really care about the technology in the background that you're using and so on. So they want just a full package where they push a button and then it works. And that was really the main learning that we did, where we then also started building the whole solution with our rewards marketplace, with the API that you can connect directly. And the blockchain is then more in the back end and really the infrastructure at the end of the day, which blockchain was born as an infrastructure. So I think we talk too much about the applications in the Web3 space than just really thinking about how can you use blockchain as an infrastructure to mostly eliminate reconciliation issues and settlement topics. So that was really the main work, was really talking with brands and building the solution on top of it.
How do you find the brands go with Web3 or blockchain generally? For some people, they're thinking, oh, this is, magical new internet technology, although not so new anymore. Others are very suspicious about it and, thinking about scam coins and, frauds and those kinds of things. How have you found the reception to blockchain generally, but then also loyalty on chain specifically?
Yeah. So at the beginning, it was exactly that. Like, you were talking about Web3 and blockchain, and people were asking you, you mean Bitcoin? And we're explaining, Bitcoin is one of them. So that was actually the main learning. We stopped talking about blockchain. So when we talk today with a brand, we don't talk about, hey, it's a blockchain based blah blah blah, but we actually just talk about the solution. I mean, I just had like half an hour before a call with a hotel to connect them with Mazamor, one of our customers and partners, and I didn't use once the word blockchain. I literally talked about, hey, look, we are a tech company. We automatize the partnership process. The benefits for you as an hotel are more direct bookings, or increasing average basket size, and pushing on co-branding strategies. If I would have started talking about blockchain, the call would have been double as long, and the customer would just be confused after that. So I always make the example, if you want to buy something online, let's say you want to buy shoes online, they don't tell you what kind of server infrastructure they're using. Like, it's not that they tell you, hey, look, we're running on Google Clouds, because you don't really care on what they're running. You just want that the website works, that you find the right shoe in the right size and for the right price. So that's really what customers and at the end of the day also brands care about. It's nice from a marketing perspective.
Are you explaining the unique utility of blockchain without mentioning blockchain? Because I agree with you, and it seems to be what I think is a very welcome trend, that on the app layer of blockchain, people are talking about blockchain far, far less, and Bitcoin far, far less. It's just here's the product, here's the utility, here's why it's better. But then I also wonder, well, then how do you explain how it's better without then mentioning the technology?
You just talk about the main benefits. So, for example, removing reconciliation. Like in our case, we just talk about removing reconciliation costs, basically having instant settlements, and that actually already the most important benefits that we deliver to a loyalty program owner are really removing reconciliation issues, instant settlement, and your users actually have automated or let's say instant exchange of their points and miles. So. And for that, you don't have to talk about blockchain. And in theory, you could do that also in a central database, but you have the issue that the bigger you become as a provider, like let's say the bigger we become then as a provider, the more trust brands actually have to give us that we don't mess up and we don't lose all that data there, because then we're talking about billions of dollars of transactions that just can get lost, can be manipulated, can be hacked, and so on. So it's a very long-term approach, but using then on-chain transactions actually helps you out to think for the future, because as soon as you are at that point where economically it just makes more sense to use a decentralized ledger instead of using a centralized one, you're already ready, and you don't have to then migrate from central to decentral.
And is there any kind of P2P marketplace when it comes to points? Because I know that's one of the things that traditionally airlines are like, or you might share it with a family member, or you can, gift a certain amount of whatever. But blockchain is, distributed in P2P, generally speaking, Bitcoin. It's one of that distributed nature is one of the kind of key USPs, I think. How might that work or not, or specifically not work when it comes to loyalty?
So, it would be amazing. Let's start there. It would be amazing if you could just freely trade your points and miles. The thing is that most of these brands want to have a very clear control on where and how can you actually exchange these points to. It has some regulatory reasons because, for example, let's take Europe. In Europe, if you actually let your customers exchange points into cash or cash into points, you automatically are an e-money provider. So you fall under the regulations of a bank, meaning a completely different compliance structure that you need to provide. And an airline doesn't want to be also a bank, very simply said, right?
Yeah.
So they have to stick to, okay, I need to control that in and outflow of my miles, as an example. On the other side, there are some reasons of just legality. As an example, there are certain brands that put in the terms and conditions that you don't own the points, just from a perspective so that you don't have to pay income tax. Because if they give you points and then you have to pay income tax on that, it's an issue for them, it's an issue for you. So in the terms and conditions, they give you the right to use those points, but they're not owned by you. So if you have that on a P2P marketplace, obviously you own then those points. So it has a completely different tax implication for you. So those are two reasons where let's say brands, just from a regulatory and legal point of view, can't even allow that. And then you have the third reason that they don't want you to use those. Let's imagine you use your miles to buy weapons, or to buy drugs, or to buy any other kind of illegal or let's say not so clean activity. They wouldn't like that. And the third reason is honestly the price going up and down. So as soon as you have that P2P marketplace, you actually also have a price fluctuation, which has an impact from a reputational perspective, because if price goes down, you have a lot of people calling your support and asking, hey, why are my miles worthless right now, or my points? And then on the other side, you actually also the CFO, I think, would kill themselves because they have a completely different calculations to do at the end of the year. When they have to know the financial report, they have to basically account for those points that are outstanding to define how much liabilities do they have from those outstanding points. So there are a few different reasons why P2P marketplace, at least right now, is very difficult to actually execute.
Yeah, so it really needs to become or stay a closed system for those reasons in particular.
At least a controlled open system, I will call it like that.
Sure, yeah, right. Yeah. As in open, as in you can plug in an unlimited number of people into the system, but it's still got rails that it needs to stay on.
Correct. So, and if you look at these larger programs, they really have a huge amount of partners. So with your miles or your points, with the large programs, you can basically get almost whatever you want. So there is a huge amount of utility already behind, and their goal is also to increase the partnership so that customers can earn and spend their points and miles better. But it always needs to be in a very controlled way. You also have classic things like a positioning from a branding perspective. So if you have a premium airline, they don't want to work with a discount brand, right?
Sure.
That is more focused on pricing and let's say, and not on quality. So you have all kinds of facets that actually then have an impact on how these brands want to play these partnerships, and that's why we focus more on giving them the tech and providing them a very efficient solution on how to make these partnerships happen. But we don't tell them you have to work with this and this brand, or you have to partner up with this brand, or you have to do it in the sense of the crypto or let's say the Web3 space, where your user has full ownership. They can do whatever they want with it, because it just wouldn't work.
Are you finding that it's mostly companies that already have an existing loyalty program that are migrating on chain, or is it people who haven't been able to really figure it out and you're coming to them with a solution saying you need points or you need a loyalty program?
So there are two ways. One is working for sure with brands that have a loyalty program, because there we can actually show them how they can increase the partnerships. On the other side, we work, for example, with a lot of smaller brands that actually want a loyalty program but don't have the resources to manage one. So what we tell them is, hey, instead of building your own loyalty program, just connect to an existing one. So right now we're onboarding, for example, multiple hotels for Miles and More, where then customers of these hotels can actually earn and spend miles from Miles and More. So much easier for the hotel, because they don't have to think about setting up the loyalty program, defining the loyalty mechanics, defining loyalty design, having somebody that actually thinks about the loyalty program in like every day. Because loyalty, like having a loyalty program is not just giving out a bunch of points and telling them you can use these points for these products. It's working on campaigns. It's working on how do you develop the program. It's analyzing the data that comes out of it to see what is the behavior of the user. How do you want to adapt the loyalty program itself? And you have these super large companies that actually spend so much money on developing these loyalty programs and actually improving them every day. So for you as an SMB, it makes sometimes more sense to actually connect to one of these larger programs. You also access the whole ecosystem. And you can actually also benefit from co-branding strategy that you otherwise wouldn't have the possibility for.
Gotcha. What do you think some of the bigger barriers to entry to Web3 and on-chain world for more traditional brands regarding customer loyalty and reward programs?
So I would say that again, by not mentioning blockchain or Web3, we don't see the barriers really into entering the Web3 space, because most of these brands don't even know about that it's on-chain transactions in the background. So for that, the question is more, and it's crazy, but it's like there's the saying, a company either has to do revenue or decrease costs. So a solution either has to push one or the other or both. It is really like that. Like all the conversations that we have with brands are all focused on what does it bring me and how much do I have to spend.
Sure.
And it's literally, those are the barriers to enter, in the sense that if you can't really show how you help them out, gaining more revenue, decreasing costs, and then showing them that they actually have return on investment by what they're spending, it's super difficult to actually convince these brands. So since we're not talking about blockchain and Web3, it's difficult to say what is the barrier there. If we would talk about blockchain and Web3, I think the barriers would be, honestly, right now, a lot of reputational topics. Just because the space is flooded with, for example, meme cards. And I mean, there are a few examples, recent examples, with the Argentinian president as an example, that just promoted or supported a meme coin. They just put completely a wrong light on the Web3 space, and not on the technology itself. That's the crazy thing. It's there's such a damage being done to the tech that actually is not born for meme coins. Like, if you read the white papers of a Bitcoin, of an Ethereum, and so on, that are really here since more than 10 years, you don't have meme coins in there. It's all about utility. It's all about solving reconciliation issues. It's all about automatizing processes, having instant settlements, and having that, let's say, really trustless layer of technology where different stakeholders can work with each other without having to hope that the other party actually, let's say, complies to what you defined.
Nice. Thank you.
So I think that's honestly the biggest reason. The second one is that if you, let's say, in the Web3 space, you would wish that brands use blockchain by themselves, I think almost impossible because they just don't know where to start from. And most of these brands, they need somebody that actually offers them a solution that they just can plug and play and get started, and not, look, this is the blockchain, now build on top your smart contract, build on top of that your application, build on top of that the API, like all of those things. So I think that's a huge opportunity for everybody in Web3, is really building a clear solution on chain that they can actually then offer to brands and to consumers.
And specifically answering one of those two problems, the how do I reduce my costs or how do I increase my income?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. How did you go about then partnering with industry giant like Lufthansa, for example, with their Miles and More program? That's a massive deal. One of the things, like you mentioned, Ethereum being around for 10 years, one of the things for 10 years that I've been hearing is just wait till industry starts to come on board, or just wait till, the big names find out about what we're doing. And that was a promise that just failed to materialize year after year. And now you are working with one of the biggest, and not just biggest, but one of the airlines with the best reputation, I think, in the world. And so how do you go from, the year on year failure to see this kind of thing happening to all of a sudden now you're doing it?
So I think on our side, I mean, if I compare us to an Ethereum, for example, or a layer one blockchain, is that they just focus on the layer one. So they just say, hey, look, we have a very strong blockchain. It has these and these benefits. Now build your application on top of it. So I would say that's the first thing we solved for a brand like that, because we didn't say, hey, this is the layer one, now build your solution on top of it, but we literally offer the whole tech stack. We also understand where these brands what these brands want from an incentive perspective. So in our case, let's say all these frequent flyer programs and loyalty programs, they want to sell more of their miles. They want to have more efficient solution to actually connect with partners. So we built literally the solution for that. And also, I would say smaller things like we don't expect from a larger brand that they, for example, integrate our technology. But we're telling them, hey, look, you have APIs, no worries, we integrate them for you, right? So all of these things help out to actually get closer to these kind of brands and actually then make a use case happen, because you take away all the effort and you actually really are a solution provider. And again, blockchain in that sense is only in the background. I mean, I remember the conversations. Yeah, they asked, "You're using blockchain in the background?" Yeah, just to reconcile all transactions. That was a conversation. It was 99% conversation about the solution, and maybe 1% conversation about the technology itself. So I think that's the biggest reason why we're able to onboard them. And at the end of the day, we brought from the beginning partners on board where we knew, okay, these partners are actually going to use, as an example, Miles and More, or Etihad Guest, which is also on board. So we try to cover all the aspects where we know these brands actually are interested in. And through that, again, the technology doesn't even matter that much. The solution, the 360-degree solution is really the key component.
Yeah. Well, we have a lot of founders and aspiring entrepreneurs who listen to the show. And so what I'm hearing you say is, or as I look at what you're doing, I see you and your brother who have some domain expertise, who identify not just a new technology stack, but a new opportunity, and then build good UX, UI, actually solve the real world problems, but then make it as easy as possible to onboard for a new customer and actually utilize. Is that the right takeaway from your story so far?
100%. Yeah, 100%. And I have also to be honest, I mean, when you listen to like a lot of podcasts of other founders, or also Y Combinator, like all the talks that you hear there, it's literally talk to your customers and build a solution for it. Essentially, it sounds very easy. It is difficult because you have, and mostly I think as a founder, you always have your ideas that you have to think, this is it. This is like the idea that everybody will buy. And then it starts there. You actually have an idea, then you test it out. You see, okay, you get that feedback, and then you have to adapt. It's a constant adaptation and iteration of your, let's say, of your original idea. And sometimes it also changes completely.
Is that why you think we haven't seen much, more adoption when it comes to on-chain rewards like NFTs? That was kind of the promise of 2019, 2020. NFTs are going to be rewards and customer loyalty programs, built around those kinds of things, but none of them really materialize in a lasting kind of way. Is that because, do you think that's because of that's just not the right vehicle, or is it because the companies and the startups that were trying to do it didn't have the same kind of vision and expertise and hustle that you have?
I mean, my honest opinion about the NFT conversation is really that it was completely completely abused, in the sense that NFT is just a piece of tech. Like, you have on a blockchain, you have either fungible tokens or you have non-fungible token. Very simple. And then there are assets out there that make more sense to tokenize through fungible tokens, and there are assets that make more sense to tokenize through non-fungible tokens. And NFTs, I think, went a bit into the wrong direction when you had all these projects that were selling out their NFTs for hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars. That was more about a PFP at the end of the day, like a cool artwork. It has nothing to do with that. Like, maybe art is one niche vertical that can make sense to tokenize through an NFT, but it's not that is the use of NFTs. At the end of the day, I'll make a very simple example in the loyalty space. So if you have a loyalty currency, it makes more sense to tokenize it through fungible tokens, right? Because it is a fungible, let's say, asset. Now, if you have an airport lounge access, that makes more sense to actually be tokenized through a non-fungible token. Mm-hmm. So for us, how we look at NFTs is really more what kind of so-called loyalty assets make more sense to be tokenized through an NFT, and which one through a fungible token. So that's why I say, for me, it was abused, because I know that there is an NFT space, but in theory, it's just a piece of technology that was overhyped.
Yeah.
And it was kind of set as the application, but it wasn't the application, because to actually have an application, you need an app. You need something that a user or a company can engage with, and then in the background you have NFTs.
Yeah. Are you using NFTs in any kind of way in the loyalty space?
We're using NFTs. So, for example, through our marketplace, you can also issue NFTs. So, as I mentioned before, a lounge access can be an NFT. A special perk can be an NFT. So, if you have, for example, after-hour shopping, or you have like a VIP treatment, all of those things can actually then be tokenized to NFTs. And let's say the loyalty currencies are all are tokenized through fungible tokens.
Yeah. That's cool.
And also there, it's more to make the reconciliation and settlement more efficient between brands, because also there you have an asset that goes from one party to the other. So there is a reconciliation, let's say, topic in between, and it just makes more sense to have that on chain. So you tokenize it through an NFT.
Yeah, for sure. What are you most excited about for the rest of this year, 2025? Either things that you're working on or things you're seeing in the space in general?
So in general, I'm always more excited when there is more maturity coming into the space, because I think that's something that is super needed. Again, I hope that the focus is more on utility, because blockchain has a huge amount of potential and opportunity. It's just about the builders in the space focusing on let's say solving real world problems, and not creating new problems at the end of the day that were not here before, and you want to solve it through blockchain or through crypto. So we're completely focused also on that. Our goal is this year for sure to scale with the partners that we have on board, like as more native guests, and really setting the stage to then onboard more and more larger partners so that we can actually expand then internationally. We have already customers with all over the world, but the focus is that we can really show how our tech stack helps out these brands on both sides, frequent flyer programs and SMBs, to actually scale up, get more revenue, decrease costs, and engage customers better, and then do that really all over the world with top 10, 20 frequent flyer programs.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big vision. As you're thinking about that, one of the things that I find very interesting is you're working alongside your brother. And obviously, you've had a long history with him, both personally, but also professionally. How have you gone navigating, is that the right word? How have you gone building with your brother? Sometimes the conventional wisdom is if you have a best buddy, there are significant pros to working together and building something together, and some significant cons to working together and building something together. There's added complexity when it's family and very close family. I'm very keen to hear, how have you gone, I mean, literally from inception of what you're doing now to building, but then as you're thinking about scaling to international and, collecting a bunch more of those top airlines and top programs, how are you thinking about working alongside your brother? Or how do you, you don't have to dob him in or anything like this, but just again, thinking for our founders who are listening or watching, how do you go working with your brother? How has that process been? And how are you thinking about, the division of responsibilities or labor or vision as you go into that, big scaling vision?
Mm-hmm. I mean, we're lucky in the sense that we're very different. So the division of on who works on what is was very simple in that sense. I come more from let's say also from what I studied, more from a business, let's say sales marketing perspective, and he comes more from let's say design, so product design, user journey design, and so on. So there was already a very clear division from that perspective, that he works more with the product tech team on actually building the solutions, and I'm more working with sales and marketing to actually bring the solutions out there. That was really good, because I think if we be both two sales guys, that would be a bit more difficult. So that side was fairly simple. It has huge advantages like trust and loyalty. There you don't have to worry 1 second about it, because again, you're family, and so you're very reliant on how that part goes. I would say the disadvantage, I don't even know if I would call it a disadvantage. You're more straightforward. You're much faster with giving, let's say, your feedback, and you don't really look you don't decorate it that much. If let's say, if you would talk to a co-founder, maybe you met since 1 or 2 or 3 years, you maybe are a bit more careful on how you would communicate something. Since you know each other so long, you are much more straightforward with the feedback. So
Sure.
I think that has advantages and disadvantages, of course, because in certain ways, the advantage is that maybe you're too real in certain moments. But it's also good because it's very clear what the feedback is, and there is no, how did he mean that now, and so on. There is not that, that issue. And we never thought of, I mean, I think we saw our parents working together. So for us, it was kind of natural, like having that family business approach, and working within family. And we saw that it was, for us, was kind of the standard of what we saw, how you build a company. So we never really thought about how will that now be if we as brothers work together. It was more we looked at it much more as an advantage and something cool to do, to work together as brothers, and again, never thought that much about the disadvantages. But I also think that's classic thing of entrepreneurs that ever think about the disadvantages of what could go wrong, or more about yeah, right. You always think about the upside and what happens if you reach your vision.
Yeah, man. I mean, you have to have a certain level of optimism that you can break
100%.
out of the kind of, you'll be the exception that makes it. But that's beautiful what you just mentioned about working with your family. I'm wondering how influential are your parents now, for example? Are they a sounding board? Are they helpful? Are they just cheering you on from the sidelines?
So I mean, our mom is actually helping out with the finances because so she's let's say doing the whole accounting, talking with regulators when it's about having tax reviews and all of that stuff, or doing audits, because that's what she also did in the companies of our parents. So that is also there. It's a super high trust level, because of course, as soon as you give somebody the money to make payments and so on, you always, and you hear so many stories. There's so many stories about the people that were in charge of the finance that suddenly you know where the money went and so on. So there you really can, as a founder, you can sleep very tight because everything is fine on that side. So yeah, that was for sure. It's for sure a huge advantage to have her on board on that side. And again, just with the years of experience that she has, I think my brother and I thinking about accounting, thinking about taxes, and talking with the VAT, how do you say, authority, wouldn't be something that let's say we know we would learn how to do it, but we don't want to learn how to do it because we prefer to focus more on building the solution and actually bringing it out on the market.
Yeah, man, that's cool. I mean, I think that's really special, actually, to be able to work with family like that. That's amazing.
100%.
Well, so one of the questions we like asking, I guess, is as you think about either in your particular area of expertise or just thinking about the market or the world or even just life in general, do you have any particularly contrarian views where most of the people, the conventional wisdom thinks one thing, but you tend to think another?
That's a Peter Thiel question that he asks in the interviews. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'll rip off Peter Thiel any day. That sounds great.
Yeah. No, 100%. And this is a difficult question. I mean, I would say that at least when I hear a lot of other people talking in the Web3 space, and it's now specifically on the Web3 space itself, that crypto is the much smaller use case than blockchain itself. So when I hear talking, a lot of people in the Web3 space, it's almost all about crypto. How do you play it? How do you make more money and so on? I think that the biggest use case is really using blockchain as the infrastructure for so many applications out there. And that is actually the future of the Web3 space. So I think that crypto will play a minor role from that perspective. It'll be kind of, utility tokens will be kind of commodities. On the payment token side, we'll see which one actually will survive and which one will actually go to mass adoption. And then you have security tokens, which are the use case is the security itself. So you again use more blockchain as an infrastructure. I think that if I would say that on a space on X, that I would get a lot of backlash. So I would say that's the biggest contrarian view that I have in the Web3 space, where I hear a lot of the other way going.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I agree. That would be the minority report. But my hope is that will be a growing perspective across the space.
Me too.
I think even just a couple of things you've identified today have really suffered because of the hype. And so the hype's actually killed a lot of things that people have kind of put their hope in, rather than actually helping to build out an ecosystem and reach that kind of mass adoption. Whereas people who are doing things like you're doing, where you kind of you subsume the fact you're using blockchain underneath just exceptional problem solving UX UI and all the other things that you need to make a company really well, like good organization and good financial management and good HR and leadership and vision and scaling and, actually being able to sell stuff to people. I think those are the kinds of things that for the last decade, the crypto bros have considered very boring, not very hypey, but yeah, man, I like you. I hope that's where it's all headed. So Gabriele, if someone wants to find out or hear more from you on X or find out more about Qiibee or find out more about what you're building, where can they find you online?
So we have, let's say if you want to build a loyalty program or you want to connect to a big one, you can go on Qiibee.com. There we have all the, let's say the tech side or the solution side of the business that is mostly focused on brands. And then we have QiibeeFoundation.org, which is then explaining more the whole Web3 side of Qiibee itself. And of course, you can follow us on X, on Instagram, so on all the different channels. You can also write directly to me. I'm also on X and sometimes also in the Telegram chat and the Discord chat. Not that much as the community would like, because there is a lot of other stuff to do. But sometimes I'm in there, so you can also directly hit me up.
What kind of things do you tweet about on X or post about?
Honestly, right now I'm just
not a lot.
Quote retweeting or reposting what Qiibee is posting. But I'm actually, there's one of my things on my agenda is to actually post more. I have a lot of times I have the kind of I'm thinking about actually this I would like to talk about on X, because I have the feeling it's an important topic, or it makes sense to talk about it and have a bit of that conversation. But just it's then going from one meeting to the other, and then arriving in the evening and seeing, okay, I need to finish also this and this because I didn't have time today since I had all the meetings. That's where the time sometimes, it's not here to make a post on X. I'm not like there are a lot of people that just can like push something out. They don't have to think a lot about it to make a post. I think an eternity about it. Am I writing it right? Is it good like that? And so on. So I need a bit more time for that.
Yeah. Oh, good. Thanks for joining us today. I really appreciate it. I have learned a lot. Honestly, I mean, I would love to have kind of drilled down more into how loyalty programs work, because I thought I had a kind of understanding of what that was. And then you kind of just peel back one or two layers of the onion. I thought, wow, it's incredibly complex and multifaceted, very, very interesting. And I'm keen to see how you go for the rest of this year, building out Qiibee and, getting those customers on board and going global. I'd love to have you back on later in the year, hear about your progress in all of that. And we could talk more about some of the kind of intricacies of loyalty. But yeah, man, all the best for what's coming up. And we will catch you on Twitter and on the website.
Yes, 100%. Thank you so much, Don, for having me. It was a really, really interesting conversation. I'm happy that it was also valuable on peeling a few layers of the onion back and showing a bit more insights into the loyalty space.
Good on you. Thank you for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Offchain. We love bringing you great guests like Gabriele, and hope we've inspired you to think and learn more about Web3, about technology, about how you might be a part of building the future with Web3 technology. As always, please like, subscribe, or better yet, share this episode with a friend. Help us spread the word, and join us again next week for another exciting episode of Offchain. Till then, take care.